happy to be here today. So like you said, we're going to be talking about Avalara, some of the things that we handle in regards to sales and use tax compliance in the United States and Canada, and really how we partner with our customers to make sure they're staying in compliance and helping them kind of further their goals, focusing on their business. All right, so here's a little background on Joel and myself. We actually went to the BAS conference in June of this year, so some of you might recognize our faces from that as well. But Joel's been with Avalara for over 3 years now. He's always worked in the technology space for the last handful of years as well, and he's got 2 beautiful boys at home, keeping him busy. And then myself, I'm pretty new to Avalara. I started in April of this year, but I've worked in the ERP and technology space for the last 5 years. I'm on the Sage team, so I work specifically with Sage 100, 300, and Intact users. And I'm working on my pilot's license, and I have a pet turtle named Shelly. So I'll give you the agenda for the rest of the day here. So really, we're going to give you an overview of the current sales tax environment, the compliance challenges a lot of our customers are facing, and then kind of talk more about e-commerce, remote sellers, some of the new developments in that area, and then really kind of discuss how Avalara helps our customers address these issues. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions as well. So feel free to put those in the chat as we go forward here. All right, so here's our current state of the union. So in the last year alone, there was around 123,000 rate and taxability updates in the United States and Canada. And then as well, there was over 131,000 sales tax holiday rule updates as well. So as you can imagine, keeping up to date on these is extremely difficult, especially if you're a company that's selling into the United States from Canada, where from our experience, it seems that it's a lot easier to handle sales and use tax compliance in Canada. If you're expanding into the United States, it can often be troublesome to kind of deal with these regulations and compliance and keep on top of that. Just adding on to that, there's over 13,000 sales and use tax jurisdictions in the United States alone. So as you can imagine, it's extremely difficult to kind of keep on top of those. Here is an example from Colorado, who is one of the most complex states in the United States. So as you can see, here's what their jurisdictions kind of look like for taxing. So they go all the way down to the local level, but almost any transaction is going to be crossing some type of border. So it's not uncommon for rates to change between neighboring buildings on the same street. Varying metrics like sales tax on paint, and they can kind of just paint a confusing picture from one region to the next. And it's just kind of getting started into sales tax. These are just some of the very preliminary issues you might face as you kind of expand your business into the United States and you're working across multiple jurisdictions. And so from there, we're going to kind of discuss the idea of economic nexus. So every state has their own thresholds that kind of dictate whether or not you need to sell or to register for sales and use tax, and then be collecting and remitting that to the appropriate authorities. So as you can see here, some of our states don't have any sales and use tax at all. We call these the nomad states. So that's New Hampshire, Oregon, Montana, Delaware, and Alaska. So those 5 states don't have sales and use tax at the state level. Alaska does have localities, but as you can see, every state outside of those 5 has some sort of economic nexus threshold that once you cross that, you need to be operating at the compliance level and be registered for sales and use tax, and then remitting that to the proper authorities at whichever frequency they request from you. So as you can see, a state like Minnesota, for example, it's either $100,000 or 200 transactions, whereas a state like Iowa is only $100,000. So these different kind of stipulations can make it tricky to kind of stay on top of your compliance, just because you might not know that you crossed the threshold. And that's something that we oftentimes help our customers address by going back, looking at their historical sales, making sure that they're in line with compliance, and if there are any back liabilities, helping them resolve those. All right. And then here's kind of a look at the revenue for the United States and tax collections. So states right now are really desperate for sales tax revenue, where it's essentially almost 50% of total revenues from the United States taxing jurisdictions. So while the U.S. economy grows, the state sales tax collection lags, and billions are lost from uncollected tax, including around $13 billion on e-commerce sales, according to a report from 2017. So as we've moved forward into this digital world, it's a lot more common to see states going after those and trying to recoup some of that sales tax money where they're not collecting that. So as you can see, these are just kind of some rough figures, but it gives you an idea that the United States is really kind of pursuing those that are out of compliance in regards to sales and use tax. So moving forward here, so here's some more challenges that we kind of discuss with a lot of our clients as we go through the process with them. So the South Dakota versus Wayfair Act. This is the case back in 2018. Essentially, the state of South Dakota sued Wayfair, saying you're selling into our state and we're not getting any sales tax revenue from this. So from there, the case was won in favor of South Dakota, stating that remote sellers need to be registered in specific states when they reach those nexus thresholds. And those thresholds have since grown significantly, just in variation across the states as the laws have come about. So we kind of show you a map of that here. So as you can see, every state kind of has their own different regulations in regards to nexus and establishing nexus. These are in regards to economic nexus. So this is when you're selling from one place, for example, in Canada, and then selling into the United States. So if you were selling from Canada into Minnesota on an e-commerce platform, for example, retail sales, including those sales made through a marketplace, would be counted towards your threshold. Oftentimes, you'll see that these can sometimes include exempt sales as well. So that's something that you also have to be cognizant of as you expand your offerings into the United States and abroad. All right, and then here's just the different types of nexus. This can often be kind of tricky to stay on top of as well. So physical nexus means that you have a physical presence in the state. So really, if you have people or property there, remote employees, independent contractors, things like that, kind of operating on your behalf, can oftentimes generate physical nexus. Oftentimes when working with stage customers, we'll find out that they have remote employees in states outside of their headquarters area. From there, kind of understand how many employees they have, what the payroll looks like, and if they have a requirement to register. But oftentimes, even one remote employee in a state can mean that you've established physical nexus there and you need to be collecting and remitting sales tax in that state. And then economic nexus, this is more so think remote sales. So you're selling from one place to another. Really, this is when you exceed a certain level of sales or transactions, and all states are different. So you kind of have to be aware and tracking this nexus as you handle that and move forward with your business. And then these other ones are a little bit trickier to kind of keep track of, just because these regulations vary a lot by states, and just the different intricacies of it and how you're kind of doing your processes. So that's oftentimes something that we can help you scope out and see if that's something that we're kind of triggering nexus on, and if it makes sense for us to pursue that route and register in those states for click-through or affiliate nexus. And then here are some physical nexus creating activities. So as I kind of discussed, having people and property in a state, maintaining inventory in a state, having like field sales, service staff. For example, a lot of people don't know that even if you have like a trade show, if you're going to a trade show in the state of Arizona, for example, a lot of times just even showing up there and operating in a business capacity is enough to trigger nexus in that state, and you'll need to register and then be collecting and remitting sales and use tax there. So just some examples. Obviously, these are kind of all over the place in regards to what actually will trigger your nexus, but it just goes to show that it's extremely complicated and hard to keep track of. So it's nice to have a partner like Avalara on your side to help you kind of make sure you're staying in compliance on these things and making sure that you're not opening yourself up to any liabilities. And then here's some things in regards to audit triggers as well. So nexus discovery, so having your nexus and not being registered in that state, payroll taxes or other state and local tax filings, for example, income tax. A lot of times if you have an employee in a state and you're filing income tax there, that can often open you up to nexus and kind of evaluations from the state. And they'll be curious as well if you're paying your sales and use tax. So these are just kind of things that send flags to the government saying, hey, they're filing these other returns here. Maybe that's something that we should look at for sales and use tax. So just some things to be cognizant of. Definitely, as you move forward, you'll have guidance from Avalara and really just understand what might trigger these audits and things like that. But really your goal with a company like Avalara is to make sure that you're staying in compliance in the first place and mitigating any of that risk right away.
Hey, Cameron. So I just want to pop in really quick. So you ran through the South Dakota versus Wayfair, which if you're in Canada, you probably don't realize what that even is, but it was a Supreme Court hearing that introduced this whole new level of nexus. Somebody that works at Avalara, his name's Scott Peterson, is actually VP of Government Compliance here at Avalara. I just came back from a show, and I think it's important for everybody to know because Scott was with South Dakota. He was the director of revenue for the state, and I just came back from a show where he was talking about the future, and obviously, you know, the economy, the global economy is a very rough patch right now, and nobody really could forecast what's going to happen. Is it going to be a complete crash? Is it going to be a little bit of a dip, and then we're going to bounce back? But ultimately, just looking at revenues from governments, what Scott is forecasting for 2024 is really the year of the audit. That was one thing that I took back from this show, is what he's saying is in 2024, it's going to be the year of the audit. So another thing to think about, obviously, this is great information to understand what triggers an audit, but also, you know, as we are getting digitized, one of the things to think about is that auditors are now more efficient because they could do audits from their computer in the office. They no longer have to go on site and, you know, get all the necessary reporting and look at your transactions like they had in years past. Now they could just email a company and say, you know, you're being audited, and here's the information you need to supply us with. And so they're able to do more audits per auditor than they have in the past. And so just something to think about. You know, we're coming up on the end of the year. If you're looking to make sure that your business is in a good place, this is very you know, important to kind of look into to make sure that next year everything's smooth, because in the back of your mind, I mean, plan for the worst in a way to make sure that if you do get audited, that it's going to go smoothly. So this is a good segue into this. So I'll hand it back over to you. I just wanted to speak to that since it's fresh. I was in front of him last week, and it was just kind of interesting to hear from his perspective what to look forward to in 2024.
Absolutely. That's super insightful, Joel. Thank you. So here's just some additional kind of rules of thumbs in the case that you are audited. So really just understanding that once you are receiving notices in regards to an audit, it's important not to ignore that. Your goal from there is to work with the auditors to make this as smooth and painless as possible. So the goal there is to kind of comply with them, meet their needs, and then make sure that you're getting everything in writing, make sure you're hitting those deadlines, and then obviously appeal where you can and make sure that you're hiring some tax experts and make sure that you're helping getting yourself back to the level of compliance. Oftentimes partnering with a partner like Avalara or your CPA is a great kind of rule of thumb as well to make sure that your go forward plan for compliance is a good one. So we'll segue from that into talking more about e-commerce and remote sellers. So sales through both offline and online channels reached about 1.22 trillion in 2021, up from 1.1 trillion in early 2021. So these are stats from digital commerce that we've pulled just to show that e-commerce is the way forward as far as sales. These are oftentimes different avenues that our customers are expanding into, and will reach out to Avalara to kind of understand the implications of Nexus as well as they go into these new markets, and making sure that they're not falling out of compliance, and making sure that their go forward plan of compliance is making sure that they're reporting to all the proper authorities, getting their sales and use tax remitted on time, and not opening themselves up to liability. Here's some marketplace facilitator information. So 45 states and Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico have localities, and some localities in Alaska have adopted marketplace facilitator laws. So almost every state in the union has marketplace facilitator laws in regards to establishing Nexus. So really, those 5 states we talked about earlier, those nomad states, are the only 5 that, for the most part, you're not going to see any type of Nexus or marketplace facilitating in. But for the most part, states are kind of always changing these laws, so it's important to make sure that you're staying on top of them as well.
Yeah, Cameron, so just on this, you know, obviously Fulfilled by Amazon is a big, you know, avenue to get into marketplace. eBay, you know, you think about some of these marketplaces that are out there, obviously they're awesome because you get access to so many different consumers that would be hard to do through a grassroots model of marketing your product. But if you are selling through these platforms, the marketplace is required to collect and remit tax on your behalf, but what a lot of businesses are just overshadowing is that those sales are still into those states. And even though the marketplace is collecting the tax on your behalf as a seller, you still need to track those sales, because if you are doing anything that's B2C, maybe on your own, e-commerce site, maybe like a Shopify or something along those lines, all those sales roll up to those economic nexus thresholds that Cameron was talking about. So kind of getting a full consolidation of all your sales, both in the marketplace as well as anything that's outside of that, and making sure that you're tracking that is super important. Because so often, it's just easy. You have Amazon or one of those marketplaces that are just doing the sales on your behalf, and you're focused on shipping. And since they're collecting tax, it's just kind of something that you're not really considering. But since, as Cameron alluded to, so many of these states have these facilitator laws, it's important to track all of that in a consolidated manner to make sure you're compliant.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joel.
Yep.
So from there, I mean, really, we've kind of shown you that some different risks can be posed to the business depending on where you're selling, what you're selling, and different taxability is extremely difficult to kind of stay on top of. So here's how Avalara works with our clients to really make sure that they're managing this. So you need to know where you're going to register. You need to be registered in the proper jurisdictions. From there, you need to be calculating the correct amount of sales tax, tracking and managing the exempt sales is in tandem with that, and then remitting it to the sales tax authority on time and in the proper amount. So here's just more stats in regards to audits and what the cost of compliance is. So sales tax accounts for more than 40% of total state and local taxes in some states. The average cost of an audit is over $300,000, including penalties, fees, and professional counsel. This is including as well like labor on your behalf as well, just understanding and spending the time to get through the audit. And then the cost of manual compliance. So for a monthly cost for a company with less than 19 employees is on average around $12,000. And then for a company between 20 and 500 employees, it's closer to $18,000 US dollars. So really, as you can see, it can be extremely expensive just in man hours to kind of handle these things. And even when you are paying people on your payroll to do this, oftentimes you'll be met with penalties due to the fact that it's almost impossible to stay on top of sales and use tax, just because it's basically a full-time job to make sure that you're always staying in compliance in that regard. So here's some tools that Avalara kind of poses for our customers to make sure that they're staying in compliance. So really what Avalara is famous for is what these three columns on the right here. We call it either the Holy Trinity or the trifecta here internally, but this tax determination tool, this is what's going to help you track your nexus. It'll tie into your instance of Sage, and essentially on every single transaction, it's going to do a rooftop lookup, make sure that you're charging the correct amount of tax based on which jurisdiction it's going to, and then all the information from that invoice will be populated with the correct tax rate, and then that information for your returns to remit to the correct authorities will be put into our reporting system for you as well to interface with this further right column. So all of that information will be rolled up so you can either do your returns more easily yourself or have us do them on your behalf. As well, if you sell a lot of tax exempt work, our information ties in with our exemption management tool. So any resale certificates, any kind of tax exempt certificates that you have from your customers, we can put directly into the system so that when it is calculating the tax for you, before putting it on that invoice, it'll interface with it and make sure that, hey, this customer is tax exempt and they have a valid certificate on file to make sure that you're not charging them tax and that all of the compliance documents you need are stored properly. We also have a tool that does not kind of connect with your systems whatsoever, and it's more so just a tax research and encyclopedia tool. This could be great for giving you access to our massive tax library of information, making sure that your product taxability is correct as you expand into new states, new jurisdictions, and you're selling. It gives you access to tax experts where you can ask questions and make sure that you're doing things the correct way. It has every form you can imagine for any return or exemption certificate as well. And really, you can just look up the rates and taxability and make sure that you're always just staying in compliance with those rules without having to go through an implementation or kind of making sure that you're tying it with any of your Sage systems whatsoever. So really, we pose these different options for different companies as everybody's challenges are different, and try to align them with the best fits for them. And then cross-border considerations as well. So Avalara's 1099 and W-9 products are relatively new, but they're extremely powerful and cost-effective. So it really just helps you collect W-9s from your vendors, manage their information in a central, secure location, and quickly e-file 1099s and other information returns to the IRS. So relatively new solution for us here, but extremely powerful, and a lot of our customers are seeing great return on investment for it as well. Do you have anything to add on this one, Joel?
No, only that, if you do have any 1099s in the U.S., this is strictly a federal form for the United States. So if you're based in Canada, this may be like a secondary language, but these are federal filings that need to occur by the end of January. The solution itself is pretty simple. It's an upload to get the necessary information. And now the feds have required from the United States side they have required the e-file component. Previously, you could just mail it in. Now it's required to be e-filed. So this is a very simple way to make this process really streamlined at the end of the year whenever you're doing a lot of other things, closing your books, etc. So it's a great solution. If you're interested, we could always, share some more information for you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Joel. And then here's more on our tax research tool as well. Really just some kind of talking points that we can discuss here, but it's nice to just have one source of information for all things taxability in the United States and some Canadian database as well. So pretty much anywhere in North America, if you need to know the tax rate, this tool will be great for you. And also it's unlimited users for the subscription, so you can use it across entities and different things like that. So really an extremely flexible and powerful solution. The states of Colorado and Missouri actually use this as their tax rate lookup tool internally. So if you were to be looking on their state website, it would actually use our solution there. So as you can see, tons of different kind of entities backing the credibility of this, and it's really just an amazing tool for our customers. All right, so this is kind of bringing us to the end of the presentation here, but as you can see, our main tenets here are just helping people get compliant, mitigating risk, and then helping you guys focus on your business through compliance tools where we're helping you determine the tax, build that tax calculation for you, and understand the taxability of your products, and making sure that you're falling in line with all different regulations, whether it's in the United States or Canada, making sure that you're always staying in compliance and then not opening yourselves up to back liability as well. So that's kind of Avalara in a nutshell, just kind of an overview of our challenges that our customers face and how our solutions help. So I'll kind of bring that to the end with questions. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat here, and Joel and I will try to answer them for you.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Joel. And I can see there is no question for now. And thank you for being a part of webinar today. Do you know where you owe? To help us improve our future webinars, we kindly request your participation in our thought survey and via email. If you would like to request a product demo, please navigate to our website, complete the form on our contact us page. All BAS Connect 2023 remote webinars will be posted on our YouTube channel once BAS Connect has concluded. We look forward to seeing you in our future webinars. Have a great day ahead. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.